Hi, and welcome to Cherry Talks Movies. This time around, I'm looking at the new George Miller joint, the 5th Mad Max saga series movie thing, object, cash cow. Furiosa, a Mad Max saga starring Anya Taylor-Joy, Chris Hemsworth, and a whole bunch of Australian character actors with a couple of English people and a New Zealander chucked in. Saw the movie today at the Sun Cinema, and I had a good time because I got to go into one of the 8 cinemas I hadn't been into before. This one's called The Grand, and it's one of the bigger cinemas in there. It's got a kind of old-fashioned look, and it also has a Hammond organ sitting in one side of the auditorium, which is kind of cool. It was a nice day for it. It was unseasonably warm for this time of year. Got into the cinema, there's like 6 people in this large cinema, which I always like. Everybody can socially distance, and nobody's going to be rustling packets of lollies or anything like that. So I went and saw the movie. Now, there's some great actors in there. There's some really good Australian actors in there. People like the guy who played the History Man, George Shetsov, who was in Shirley Barrett's Love Serenade back in the day, playing this sleazy disc jockey, Ken Sherry. And Ian Roberts turns up, the first rugby league footballer in Australia to come out as gay. He turns up as one of the characters too, and I have a lot of time for Ian Roberts. You all know this story. It's a prequel to Mad Max Fury Road and tells the story of the character played by Charlize Theron in that movie and how she became who she is and what she is. Totally unnecessary story to tell. Nobody was asking for it. But George Miller, bless his 79-year-old heart, decided he was going to make this movie. And he corrected the error that Fury Road had by filming it and setting it solidly in Australia. And right at the start, you get a Google Earth view of future Australia after the apocalypse, zooming in on a place which seems to be somewhat south of Alice Springs or Uluru in South Australia, where there's absolutely nothing. There's none of the landscapes you see in this movie anywhere near that kind of place. George Miller does it anyway. But I'm not going to straight review this movie. What I'm going to do is slightly different this time around. I've got 20 nitpicks I want to do with this movie. So rather than doing a straight review of it, which everybody in Christendom is going to be doing, I'm doing nitpicks and things that annoyed me about this film. And at the end of that, I'm going to give you one little Easter egg that appears in the movie that only Australians, if they look at a certain place, will know about. So hang around for that one. So basically, here are my 20 nitpicking questions. First one, and I like this one. Why is Furiosa the only person in the entire wasteland in the middle of Australia 50 or 60 years after apocalypse? Why is she the only one who has an American accent? Everybody else has proper Australian accents like normal people have. But she has an American accent because Charlize Theron spoke with an American accent in Fury Road, even though she is South African. It really did take me out of the film because the person playing the child version of Furiosa at the start of the film, and Anya Taylor-Joy only appears an hour into the film, spoke with an Australian accent. Now she grows up among people who speak with an Australian accent. She somehow develops an American accent. Might not be too noticeable to people from America, but for Australians it's like, what? That's the first one. Second one is, why are there so few Indigenous Australians in the middle of Australia? Yes, there are a few of them. One of the people taking the trucks from the Citadel to Gastown is Indigenous. He gets killed off pretty quickly. And the person playing Furiosa's mother at the start of the film, an actress called Charlie Fraser, is Caucasian and an Awabakal Indigenous. So Furiosa's mother is played by an Indigenous Australian actress who is fantastic. I would like to see a full movie with that character because she kicks ass more than anybody else in that movie. And we see her at the start. Her kid's been kidnapped by raiders and she just goes totally mad and follows them. She's an expert sniper. She takes a bunch of them out and then she follows the rest of them. That is the best part of the film is at the start when Mary, the mother of Furiosa, goes after her daughter. There's nothing in the film that has the emotional and visceral and action impact of those scenes. All credit to Charlie Fraser because she really lives the character in the best possible way. Number 3, George Miller doesn't care about the timeline. The AV Club did an analysis of this a couple of days ago, and they worked out that Max Rokitansky has to be about 90 years old by the time he appears in Fury Road, because the timeline, based on what the characters say and do, is totally balked, and George Miller just doesn't give a stuff about it. He doesn't want to create a consistent world. He doesn't want to bother with that because all he's about is car crashes. And that bothers me as well because I like a little consistency. If you're giving us a very textured and detailed and layered and interesting world, it doesn't hurt to just get your ducks lined up as far as when things are occurring and to whom and how much time is passing between one movie and the next. That kind of stuff is important to a lot of people. And again, it's about that verisimilitude. It's about being plausible to an audience. And audiences do nitpick. And it's not a bad thing if you just decide to get your ducks lined up, sit down with a pen and paper and work your shit out. George Miller doesn't do that. Question number 4. Who gave Chris Hemsworth that nose? Because I think they didn't want him to look like Thor. Yeah, like the Thor when Thor just plays computer games with his rock friend. So they gave him a hook nose. That nose, it kind of reminds me of all of the interesting prosthetic noses that Orson Welles had in his career, because Orson Welles didn't like his little button nose. But Hemsworth's one, there are a lot of close-ups in very high definition here. And the rest of the facial muscles and everything else move as normal. Even looking at my nose when I talk, my nose moves a little bit, but prosthetic noses don't. And that kind of takes you out of it, because I kept looking at it, trying to see the seam lines on Chris Hemsworth's prosthetic nose all through this movie. Again, it's another tiny thing that took me out of the movie. Number 5, why do they need petrol when they could do things like land yachts or wind-powered vehicles or something like that? There seems to be that obsession with gas-guzzling vehicles all through all of these movies. Would have been really interesting if somebody came up with a really groovy land yacht design and just lifted a sail and just cruised past all of the gas guzzlers and took them out. There's some technologies that would have been interesting to incorporate into this movie. And also they're low tech. They don't require the infrastructure that a whole bunch of V8 engines do. And I think that would have made things more interesting. Kind of like the way the characters did in Terry Dowling's novels with Tom Rhinoceros back in the day. Lots of wind-powered vehicles and a world built around using wind power as a means of propulsion for vehicles. Which brings us to the other issue. Apart from the people of Furiosa's homelands, who live on a stretch of green and verdant land in the middle of the desert, which has a water supply and lots of fruit and vegetables, and they run wind turbines and all that kind of thing. They've got an idyllic life there. Why do the 3 citadels, the one run by Immortans Joe, Bullet Town, which creates all of the bullets for everybody, and Gas Town, which has oil reserves, why does everybody live there? Why don't you head to the coast where you can at least go fishing to get a feed, and you can use a solar still to get water? Why are all these white people hanging around a barren desert when they don't need to? Head south, head north, head west, head east, and go to the coast where living isn't as difficult as it is living in an arid desert. It's always struck me with the Mad Max movies that that's weird, and that people should head to where the resources are, as inevitably in the real world they do. Doesn't happen in George Miller's universe. Number 7, the Citadel, which is on the rocky outcrops. It's the one from Fury Road where all the water poured out of the mouth and all that kind of thing. Apparently that grows enough food on the top of those 3 rocks to feed not only them, but also to feed the people of Gastown and to feed the people from Bullet Town. And everybody seems to live on potatoes and cabbages, which is, apart from anything else, gives you an alternate energy supply, because there's going to be a lot of methane produced there. But I never believed that the Citadel was growing enough food for even the people in the Citadel, and yet they export food and swap it for gasoline with Gastown and swap it for bullets with Bullet Town. Just doesn't look right, and that's the way my mind works. That kind of nitpicking is the way my mind works. Number 8. Nitpicking, but kind of cool. The people living in the little tunnels underneath the lowlands in the Citadel where the water is seem to live on maggot farming, because they get their protein from maggots from the bodies of dead people. That's not a good way to get protein. Yes, you don't want to eat dead people because, it's icky, and it's a social taboo in a lot of societies. But scraping the maggots off dead people and eating them, I'm not sure it's a reliable supply of food. It's also really rough on the farmers. But that kind of stuff is weird. Nitpick number 8. Cars and motorcycles need more than gasoline to run. They need a lot of other resources as well. They need gaskets, they need rubber for the tires, they need valves, they need all sorts of other things. They need lubricants of other kinds which aren't produced in the same way gasoline is. So everybody's got these cars and are running them and are burning lots and lots of fossil fuels because Gastown has all the petrol. But cars and other vehicles need a lot more resources which aren't sourced in the same way. And also there are things like you need to machine the heads on engine blocks, you need to replace parts, you need to replace transmissions, and that takes a lot of very fine lathes and things like that which aren't easy to access. And even if you can access lathes and things to do that, the bits you use to cut the metal in the lathes wear out fast. I used to work at a factory where there were lathes everywhere, and the bits used to wear out cutting hard metal. Again, it takes me out of the movie. Number 9, Bullet Town produces all the bullets. It produces the shell casings and the bullets. And so there's obviously a source of metal there, and the quarries that are there indicate that. But bullets aren't just shell casings. You need to find explosives, gunpowder at least. You need to also refine that to a high quality. And you need to then pack it in. You need to find copper or steel to make the heads of the bullets. Lots and lots of stuff there. You need lubricants for the shells as well. They don't just slide into the guns by themselves. There are lubricants you need for guns and for the bullets as well. None of that is taken into consideration. You've just got a big pit with a mine in it, and they produce all the bullets. Again, it's that resource thing. You need a lot of very complex resources to run any kind of civilization. Even a low-tech medieval one needs a whole bunch of different things, which can't just be sourced from one point geographically very easily. And Gastown confuses the hell out of me. It's got a whole bunch of oil refineries in it, which are kind of cool. Lots of distillation towers and stuff like that. And it's got a moat of crude oil all the way around it. You want to take down Gastown? Chuck a match into the moat. It's totally stupid that the resource that they rely on is just lying around waiting for a lightning strike or a bushfire or somebody to drop a match down there. It's dumb. It is dumb world building. And I object to that because it assumes I'm stupid. And there are moments when I'm not. Number 11, I've already touched on this one. The movie has a front-loaded drama, all the really cool drama. I'm not saying the cool explosions. I'm not saying the cool crashes. I'm not saying the equivalent of an old Cowboys and Indians thing that the trucks and the other vehicles do with each other all through the movie. The real drama and the gutsy drama and the hard-punching drama of this movie is in the first 20 minutes as Furiosa is kidnapped by the Raiders and as her mother goes after her to kill the Raiders, not only to get her daughter back, but so the Raiders can't tell Chris Hemsworth's character where this place of plenty is. That works. That is kick-ass action. That I could watch a whole movie of. Nothing after that goes anywhere near it, and that's deeply disappointing. They were getting it slightly into spoiler things, but not too much. This isn't the guts of the spoilers. The reason that Chris Hemsworth's character is so muscly is he's got a source of protein that other people don't have. His doctor, played by Angus Sampson, good character actor, good Australian character actor, leeches blood from all of his people and turns it into blood sausage. And Hemsworth's character eats the blood sausage, which is his source of protein, through cannibalism. For a start, blood sausage ain't just blood. Blood sausage also has grains in it. It has a casing. It has other kinds of meat, though. There is an implication that there is some human meat in there. You don't just make a blood sausage out of meat and blood. You need a binding agent, which is usually barley or wheat or something like that, which this doesn't have. You can't have black pudding without those other things to bind it. Silly idea. I told you I'd be nitpicking. Number 14. Immortan's Joe and all of his war boys, all the guys who are shaved and painted white and who use aerosol chrome to gear themselves up by spraying in their mouths chrome paint. Where do they get the aerosol chrome from? It's quite a complex thing. You need to get a propellant for the chrome. You need to get the chromium paint. Aerosol cans aren't easy to manufacture. None of that stuff is easy to make. And there are better ways to hype up people. Find a way to give them some kind of fungal amphetamine or something like that. Make something up like that, which would work a lot better than getting the chrome like they're underprivileged people in a poor country town. That stuff, even in Fury Road, didn't really hit for me because the aerosol cans are a high-tech item, and this is not a high-tech civilization. Number 15. And I'm enjoying tearing this apart. The war boys use explosive spears. They're big, long spears with explosives at the end of them They chuck them at things and they go boom, and things catch on fire because they're basically Molotov cocktails with sticks on the end of them. That's kind of wasteful of resources. Just give the buggers crossbows. Why would you bother with the big boom and the fire, apart from making it look good in a movie, when you can have some really cool crossbows with maybe expanding heads? There are some fairly low-tech ways to make that, but they don't do that. They have these enormous long spears that the war boys throw from the vehicles they're pursuing other vehicles with. You get a big explodey bit, and then things happen. It doesn't work for me. I think it's a waste of resources, and it's a stupid way to do it. You make a bloody cool crossbow out of the suspension of a car. You just get that bendy metal and you can cut it down and make a really nice flexible crossbow out of those things. And there are no lack of cars in the universe of Mad Max. So give them crossbows. Let them play with those. We do have a compound bow that turns up in the movie, but crossbows, I love them. Number 16. Here's a big one. Who maintains all these roads? Because there's a lot of bitumen on those roads, and they're all flat and laid out. Not all of them are bitumen. A lot of them are dirt. But who grades the dirt to make sure it's as smooth as it is in these movies? Who does that? And how safe is it for them to do that, given the fact that there are raiders all over the place just ready to shoot people or kill people for no really good reason? Whoever maintains the roads are the real hero in this movie, because it's got to be the most dangerous job in town. 17, I've already mentioned Furiosa's mum being racially different from Furiosa, being a First Nations woman, where Furiosa and Anya Taylor-Joy, who is Argentinian and European by extraction, doesn't look in any way Indigenous. And I think that's, at least from an Australian point of view, that's a bit of cognitive dissonance. That's, why is that happening? And why couldn't they find an Australian actress? And number 18, this is the one that gets me. Number 18 is my biggest pet peeve of this movie. I'm going to bring up the IMDb page for me. Who the hell thinks up the names in the Mad Max universe? Who the hell gives people names like Dr. Dementus, which is Chris Hemsworth's character's name? Because if anything doesn't say powerful leader, it's a word that means losing your marbles. Dr. Dementus, which also is a reference to Dr. Demento, but Dr. Dementus, it's not a strong name. If you're going to think up a name, you wouldn't say tertiary syphilis as a name. Well, you would if you didn't like the person, but you know what I mean. And there are also other people. Tom Burke is pretty good in this movie, by the way, playing a character called Praetorian Jack. And then, of course, you got Furiosa, which apparently is a name that somebody from a peaceful society gives to her daughter. And then you've got Immortan Joe, the character played by Lockie Hume in this movie and played by Hugh Keys-Byrne in Fury Road. Unfortunately, Hugh Keys-Byrne died, and so Lockie Hume takes over the character. And then you've got other things, which are the People Eater, played by John Howard, who was also in Fury Road playing the character. Rictus Erectus, played by Nathan Jones, who's one of the sons of Immortan's Joe. Who's going to name the kid Rictus Erectus? Because it means stiff smile, I suppose. And the other kid is called Scrotus. Now, if you named me Scrotus, for a start, I wouldn't like you. And for a second thing, I would change my name the moment I could speak. There are also other characters called Smeg and the Octoboss and Mr. Harley and Mr. Davison. Mr. Harley's a character played by Ian Roberts, by the way. Let's have a look. Who else? What else have we got here? But the names are cringingly bad. They're the kind of names you give characters you're playing in role-playing games when you just want to have a bit of fun while you're playing Skyrim. You'd call your character Scrotus, but not real. And also Toe Jam, the character played by David Field at the start of the movie. Yeah, it's one of those things where maybe think it through. You're not being clever by thinking up dumb names for people. But Dr. Dementus, Hemsworth's character, wrong name. It's not a spoiler, but it's a question for the end of the movie. And once you've seen the movie, you can then answer the question for me. Where does Furiosa plant the peach seed at the end of the film? What exact place does she plant it in? Because I've got my ideas and they're pretty icky. Just let me know what you think. And the last thing I've got for you is the little Easter egg. Now, Lockie Hume plays Immortan's Joe in this movie, taking over from Hugh Keys-Byrne, as I said. But he also plays another character in the movie. One of Dementus's lieutenants is also played by Lockie Hume, but because he's playing Immortan's Joe, well, this much of his face is covered, and he's got totally different hairstyle and things like that. So he also plays the offsider to Dementus, and that character's name is Rizdale Pell, which is an in-joke for Australians because two pedophile priests in Ballarat, not too far from here, in in rural Victoria were Gerald Risdale and George Pell. George Pell was also the Bishop of Ballarat and went on to be the financial head of the Vatican before he dropped dead. So there's a deliberate choice here that they named one of the bad characters in this movie after two pedophile priests. Pell looked after Risdale, who's I think still alive and is living in a prison somewhere. But they named one of Dementus's lieutenants after two pedophile priests. And it's only if you deep dive into it and you know the history that you would know that. And also, if you go to Ballarat for any reason, if you go past any Catholic church in Ballarat, on the iron fence outside the Catholic church, there are always ribbons tied, which respect and reference the victims of those priests and many others. There was a pandemic of pedophiles in Ballarat from the 1950s onwards. So that's kind of interesting little Easter egg there for you, which people outside Australia are just simply not going to know about. And it's quite a sad one, but I can understand why you would name a nasty character after two very nasty and very damaging men. So what did I think of the movie? That's the other thing too. I've done my nitpicking. What did I think of the movie? It was okay. It wasn't bad. There's some really great stunt work and special effects. And it's good to see Hemsworth playing a different kind of character, but a bit differently. And seeing him stretch as an actor and kind of going into character roles. He's not going to be able to play Thor, Odinson forever, even though there are rumours of a fifth Thor movie being in development. I kind of like that. Anya Taylor-Joy, she doesn't get a lot to do. She doesn't have a lot of dialogue, and she only turns up an hour into the movie. And she doesn't look a lot like Charlize Theron, either physically or in the way the character is played necessarily. Charlize Theron's a lot taller and has more heft to her than Anya Taylor-Joy, an actress I like. I like her in a number of things, including Last Night in Soho, amongst other stuff. But it's good to see a lot of Australian character actors getting gigs and doing interesting things. It's good to see Mad Max being filmed in Australia again rather than Namibia, because they filmed Fury Road in Namibia because suddenly there was a lot of rain and all the Australian deserts went green. And so they used Namibia as an alternative. I kind of didn't like, because I think that at its heart, Mad Max and all of the Mad Max movies are Australian movies and Australian stories, and it's an Australian franchise. In fact, it's the most successful Australian franchise in movie history, and I prefer that I hear Australian voices and I see Australian landscapes when those movies are made. So let me know what you think, whether you've seen it or not, whether you're going to see it or not, whether you're going to wait for streaming. It's not doing as well in the box office as they anticipated, but then no movies this year are. The Fall Guy went to streaming 19 days after it hit cinemas because it died in the arse in cinemas because it was an intellectual property nobody really cared about, and maybe Baby Goose has had his day. But yeah, the big tentpole movies that people are expecting to land in this Northern Hemisphere summer season at this stage just aren't landing, and they're digging into a lot of old franchises to try to get a hit. While I was watching Furiosa, there was a trailer for a new Bad Boys movie with Martin Lawrence and Will Smith. I haven't seen any of those. They just didn't ping my radar at all. And this one looks like every other buddy cop comedy you've seen in the last 40 years. It's got absolutely nothing new on the plate. So I'm not sure where cinema's going, particularly large-scale cinema. Small-scale cinema is doing well. Inexpensive movies, particularly in genres like horror, are doing really well at the moment. And also in some dramas as well. But the big tentpole movies, the really big, bombastic, over-the-top, popcorn and soft drink movies, just aren't hitting this year. And people are concerned about it. And they're kind of going, yeah, but last year Barbie and Oppenheimer did well. What happened this year? And there's a lot of analysis into that. I'm not going to dive into it because I'm not sure yet. But I think that maybe cinema's hitting a tipping point where making a movie for $250 million isn't going to happen anymore. And that they're going to have to get a little more lighter and nimbler in the kinds of movies they make. Let me know what you think. So that's it for this time around. Thanks a lot for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. You can send me some money through Patreon at patreon.com/TerryTalksMovies and becoming a patron. And I will send you my wonderful, very eclectic Spotify playlist every month, and probably a few other things in the future. I'm glad I went to see the movie. Had a great day doing it. Got myself a delicious banh mi afterwards at a place called Friend or Pho, which I recommend if you ever go to Yarraville. But the movie itself, I kept asking questions all the way through it about the movie and the world of the movie. And that's not the way I want to enjoy my cinematic entertainments. So anyway, until next time, when I've got some more interesting stuff and a Science Fiction Saturday once more, watch some good movies, watch some bad movies. Watch some Australian movies, please. We need our actors and our creative people to get a little bit of love and to get a little bit of respect and to get more gigs. And I'll catch you next time.